I'm the first male born in the family. So that right there you have to be assertive. You have to stand up and fight. You have to defend. I shook the system when I came out. The minute I stepped on that red dot, there was this huge, correct. And grace. That's the big one.
Are you curious about Latino culture? Do you like learning from personal stories from experienced people? Would you like some skills on how to deal with what life throws at you? If so, then you're in the right place. This is the American Masculinity Podcast. I'm Tim Winnicky. I'm an educator and licensed mental health professional out here in Colorado, and I'm really curious about working with and doing better and understanding Latino culture. So I'm so happy today that we've got Alejandro Castro coming on. Alejandro is a TEDx speaker, counselor, and educator. He's traveled all over the country helping people understand various aspects of life, the work, and how to take care of yourself, to include the FBI. We're so lucky to have him come on and share his expertise. I hope you learn as much from him as I did. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alejandro, thanks so much for coming on and sharing.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
I think it's worthwhile to introduce you a little bit to everybody.
Okay.
And a story that I haven't heard yet and are like many comings across each other is, how does one go from being in parole to teaching the FBI about vicarious trauma? That seems quite the journey.
Yes. So when I was I was a probation officer for a good 8 years, a drug court probation officer. I was working with youth who were, they were arrested with drugs. We had the convention here in Denver, and a lot of kids were arrested for sex trafficking, soliciting sex. And when I went to do the assessments, the screening of them, I found out that the majority of the kids were not from here. They were from other states. They were trafficked here by gangs. And then that's how I started working with the FBI. Back in the day, the kids were being charged for prostitution. And we were able to override that, and they were given diversion, and we started providing them services. And the more work I started doing with the kids, the closer I became with the FBI, in collaboration with them. And so I left the probation department to work with the Denver District Attorney's diversion program. And that's when I started building a solid relationship with the FBI, working with specifically survivors of sex trade industry, specifically the kids. And then from there, I just started training here locally and then nationally. And then it pivoted to, how do you take care of yourself working with this population? And then they asked me if I can work with the agents and the victim advocates and training them on vicarious trauma. And so it just bloomed organically.
Just kind of kept going. Yeah, that was kind of my journey through victim services.
Yeah.
Right. Starting in the Air Force, working with folks, and then working your way out. When did you decide to make the transition from kind of trainer and advocate to counselor?
I've always done both. I went from probation.
It's always kind of been parallel?
Yeah, it's been parallel. I went more from probation. I jumped the fence from probation to clinician. After Denver District Attorney's Office, I started noticing, when I started working with the kids, I was using a lot of MI, a lot of Jungian depth psychology concepts to work with symbols and songs to deal with a lot of the unconscious, a lot of the wounding of the kids. A judge actually asked me to approach the bench and asked me, when are you going to jump the fence and leave? And I was like, excuse me? I just like, yeah, why? When are you going to leave? This is not for you. You're more of a therapist than you are an officer. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And I left in 2015. I left and I started my own agency. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah. I think you'll probably have heard these stories too. Most people that come into counseling, particularly guys, where it's a second career, someone in authority had that conversation with you.
Correct. And for me, it was the judge,
an active judge.
An active judge. Like, what are you doing here still? You need to jump and get out of here. You're not with all due respect, he goes, you're a therapist. You're not an officer.
We're going to miss you, but when is that happening?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that, and then speaking to Mitch Morris, who was my boss back in the day at the Denver DAs, he's like, it's time, Alejandro, it's time for you to go. And I was like, okay, I'm out. Yeah, he didn't fire me. It's just, he knew it was time for me to spread my wings and fly. Yeah.
Yeah, I had kind of two of those conversations. One was with a trainer for the bystander interventions folks. It was a week-long training where we're teaching people what to do about it. And then one of the PhDs like, come to lunch with me. And they're like, what do you do? You're doing the wrong thing. Right.
Yeah.
And then like two commanders in a row are like, when are you going to go do that?
Yeah. Yeah, it happened organically. I'm super grateful they did because between Mitch and the judge, they're two people that I really admired and looked up to. So
Mhm.
I knew they came from a good space. So I took the leap. Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the like societal mentorship that so many
correct,
guys need and can like treasure when we get it.
correct, correct.
Yeah, nice.
Organic too. I loved it. Yeah,
Yeah, everybody talks about how to create mentorship, and at the end of the day, it's got to be organic, and it's
correct,
just exposure to quality people, and
correct.
that ends up shaking out. I feel like it's a dynamic that we're really good about finding when we're given space to.
Yeah, one of the things I really admire from a lot of the people that I look up to is when they make a mistake or they own it and they learn from it, and you see them evolve from it as well. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
ends up being a lot of the way I teach
correct.
is listing my clinical mistakes and what I did
Yeah.
about them.
Hey, listen,
Right?
I've got scrolls.
Right? Well, I think it just like I just remember none of my instructors going through the program doing that really. It was always from this like very aspirational, like the best therapy runs like this,
Correct.
as opposed to like this is what the job's gonna look like.
Correct. Well, and I one of the things I like to talk about, especially when I work with when in mentorship, is there is a intersectionality between professional and human that we
Mhm.
are taught not to mix in graduate school, but we can't dismiss it. We're still I'm a professional and I'm still a human. I have to honor my humanness. And I think there's a big fear of showing up as a human because of reputation. What would people think? What would people say if they knew? It's like they will respect it because you're being human and a professional at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that for me, and I'd be curious to know what it's like within Latino culture.
Mhm.
But that was also something that my father and grandfather gave me, right? There was this
Right.
very like, this is how you're presenting to the world. And you need to hide various parts of your humanity to make sure that you're safe, secure, and able out in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a term familismo in the Latin culture where is you're faithful to the family and there's a lot
Hmm.
of unspoken rules that you have to follow and the underlining of that is loyalty. Make sure how you present to the world as a son, as a spouse, as a partner, as a brother is with integrity. Even though you have to deny your humanness, you still
Hmm.
stand firm and loyal to this. And a lot of times that it doesn't align. Does that make sense? It doesn't
Yeah.
align with who you are and how you see yourself.
I always, the frame that always kind of helped me make sense of it coming from the outside is the idea of that collectivist culture pressure versus the individualistic American
Hmm.
culture,
Correct.
right? And so
Correct.
how does that frame adequately to like encase that?
Well, I think well, in the familismo, when you start
Hmm.
thinking about, and I'll speak for my experience and a lot of my Latino friends is like, so the Castros, right? The Castros have these. This is how we function. This is how we roll. This is what we do. This is how we speak. And when the going gets tough, this is how we act. And so there is this expectation within the family system that is either influenced by religion or by gender stereotypes and social expectations. Does that make sense? It's an
Yeah.
intertwine of all three that can be supportive, but if it doesn't align, can be oppressive as well. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Like,
Yeah.
so when I think about my upbringing, I was brought up in a very Pentecostal Christian home, where and where our reputation as Christian kids had to be aligned with the religious dogma, right?
Mhm.
Well, growing up gay, and, first of all, I'm the first male born in the family, so that right there has a cultural expectation. I have to carry the family name on, get married, have kids because it's my responsibility. It's unspoken, but there it is. There's that
Mhm.
loyalty. And then being from a Pentecostal home, there's some Christian values that are applied to that as well, on top of societal. I can't leave
Mhm.
because I'm the firstborn male. I can only leave the house when I'm married, and it is my responsibility to take care of my parents when they age. And if I don't take care of it, my sister has to take care of it. There's these social
And
expectations.
And how does that work being the oldest male with like the responsibility to their siblings? Is there
Oh
like a
yeah.
hierarchy there as well?
Oh yeah. When I left California to come to Colorado because I got a scholarship,
Hmm.
I abandoned my brothers. I abandoned my siblings. I was shunned because you are the second, it's the parents, the hierarchy is the parents, and then you're the next in line. So you
Hmm.
needed to mentor them. You needed to guide them. You needed to have the conversations I'm not able to have. And it's like, wait a minute. I never signed up for this. And it's like,
Oh,
no, but this is part of the cultural expectation. And I
yeah.
get it. It works and works in very family system, but for me it did not work.
No. Well, and it doesn't sound like it's negotiated. Like
Mm-mm.
you were raised in California?
I was raised in Southern California. I was born in Mexico. We immigrated when
Hmm.
I was 8 months old, and I was raised in Southern California. So I
Yeah.
consider myself Mexican immigrant, and my brothers were born here, so they're Chicano. They consider themselves Chicanos, Mexican
Yeah.
American, and so we are bicultural by nature. Our nuclear system,
Yeah.
because we're Mexican, firstborn Mexican immigrants, and then we have native, we have Chicanos, and so we that dynamic is very interesting as well in our family, right?
It's always funny. I like making the comparison within white culture to like my Irish background. Like my grandmother and I used to have some very good conversations around what that looked like for the first generation of the
Hmm.
boat and how trying to help them navigate the new country while they're giving you kind of a distorted view of what you need to be as an American too,
Correct.
as just kind of like part of the immigrant story. And
Correct.
I think as like white folks, we forget that that's part of our history too. Like at some point,
Right.
our family came over and did this.
Right, right. We're all immigrants. We're all
Right.
immigrants. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, in
And
my
it's just
family,
a,
it was very interesting because in my household, just to give you an idea, when we were growing up, we had a household rule where from the door forward, you speak Spanish, you read in Spanish, and you read, speak, and watch TV in Spanish. Everything's in
Mhm.
Spanish. Once you leave the door, it's English. And so then when my younger brothers were born, all of a sudden it's bilingual. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
what happened here? And so it shifted, right? As the
Yeah.
family system grew, so did the cultural expectations within the home.
And how did the code switching of that impact you and like how you move in the world?
I
Mhm.
think in Spanish and I translate in English. So I'm constantly when I'm hearing something I translate. So I work with both languages and I switch all the time.
Mhm.
Where my brothers, my younger brothers, they think in English and they're
Mm.
constantly translating to Spanish. And so they struggle a lot with speaking Spanish because even though their first language was Spanish, they were able to evolve and develop more in English than we were, right? Even though I
Mhm.
came at 8 months old, but we had that cultural norm within our home that we only spoke Spanish at home, and so I read, write, and speak in Spanish. My brothers speak in Spanish; they can't read it that well, and they can't write it. Whereas I am literally bilingual, completely bilingual, read, write, and speak. Yeah.
I want to like keep going down the family rabbit hole here a little
Yeah.
bit longer.
Hey, that's
How
fine.
my grandfather, his parents were first generation, like they came over as kids from Germany. And he was always really angry at them because they wouldn't let him speak or learn German, right?
Mhm.
Because it was right after World War II. Like, this is not
Correct.
going to be a safe space for him to do that. It was something he talked to me about with some bitterness later in life because it felt like it was a very large disconnect between him and his parents and his culture. Was any of that going on for your siblings as they were like born here and your family was kind of like, you're an
No,
American now?
no, it's very funny. Now we're seeing it with the grandkids, with the nephews and nieces. So my nephew, they understand Spanish, but they don't speak it because they feel
Hmm.
that they can't enunciate correctly or they can't conjugate the words appropriately. But the uncles and the aunts are constantly saying, "No, we're going to speak in Spanish around you." So we speak in Spanish to them and at them, and they reply in English. They understand it 100%, but and there's I think Sammy, my oldest nephew, he's now 23, 22, 23. He's fluent, he's bilingual, and he read, writes, and speaks in Spanish. However, he gets mocked because my sister married a Cuban, and so his Spanish is very
Got a different accent.
had a different accent, and so he speaks a Cuban. He can speak Spanish like Mexican Spanish, but the accent comes out as Cuban sometimes. My sister's kids, they have a Spanish that's Cuban mixed with Mexican accent, and then my brother's kid is more Mexican, and so when we bring the family together, we have Spanglish, Spanish, and English with Cuban accents. And so it's a diverse, joyful interaction, if you may, because you can see the diversity within the family system. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of choices happening with your generation around protecting the culture of it.
Correct.
Right. And that's why it sounds like that's why you're so insistent on speaking Spanish to them, is that you're going to keep this.
Yes, I felt very close to my grandparents. I was very close to both my grandmas. The little contact I had with my grandpa and he's my step grandpa, but I had a very close relationship. The richness in the storytelling that came with the grandparents, and being able to understand the nuances in languages, the silent moments, the gestures. There was a richness in watching them and observing them, especially my grandmother, my nana, from my maternal grandmother. I spent spring breaks, summers with her, and there's so much richness in the language and in gestures that come with certain storytelling that you miss it. And I tell that to my nephews that, go spend time with your grandparents, talk to them, speak with them in Spanish, and notice, well, grandma, when she gets us, she always goes, huh. And what do you think that means? The nonverbal gestures. Okay, what do you think that gesture means?
What's the cue there?
Exactly. She doesn't care. It's exactly. You see these little nuances. It comes with the culture, and you start picking it up. The more you work with people, you're going to start picking up these little gestures that mean something. Whereas no Spanish class is going to teach this to you.
No, and I think some of that's just like recognizing the individual within the culture and how they're expressing it. And you can't do that without time, without considerable time.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I owe it to the audience to move on from this, despite I'm really, really enjoying getting to know you and knowing your family better. I think as a white guy trying, right? I don't feel like I have a full understanding of the distinction between machismo and masculinity. In my mind, the thing I hear there is just Latino guys, which I feel like I'm missing a lot of context here.
Yeah. So when we talk about machismo, there's a couple of things that come to mind. So we talk about, first of all, let's talk about gender stereotype, right? There's a gender stereotype that you have to fulfill. And then there's a social stereotype that you have to fulfill. The social does not necessarily include family, but that family component is one that has to step up. And within the family, there is that religious or spiritual. Does that make sense? So you have
just these layers on layers.
These layers of it. And so then, for example, in my family, I was, as the first male born, there is a family, social, and cultural expectation. It is my responsibility to continue the family name, the family traditions. When my parents pass, they pass the torch to me. All of the finances, if I was to go to Latin America, the farmland, all of the family belongings, I get to distribute how that works, because I am the firstborn male, and it comes with a hierarchy. After my parents, it's me. And so
it sounds kind of akin to that European feudalism throwback, where the oldest son is the one who's like responsible for all the resources every generation.
Correct. And so therefore, with that authority comes an expectation of assertiveness. You have to be assertiveness, assertiveness is misconstrued a lot of times culturally with aggressive. And so then you have to be assertive. You have to stand up and fight. You have to defend. You have to speak up. You have to step up, speak up, and fight for the family, because that is
take that space, like fill that space anytime it's available.
Correct. And you die with honor. You fight with honor. If in the process of fighting or standing up, you get hurt, that is a badge of honor.
Yeah, that's just part of doing business.
Exactly. And so
Okay.
each family system has a different way of showing up and different expectations that you have to fulfill. If my dad had a business, it is my responsibility to take the business on. I don't have a choice.
Mhm.
I have to take it
Yeah.
on. I'll go even further back in the day. If I was the oldest brother and I got married and I had a wife and kids and I died, my brother had to step up and marry my wife and take
Yeah.
over the family system. Does that
Mhm.
make sense? It's a domino effect. Like if I step out, the next one in line has to step in, and so
Mhm.
it's with that in mind that there's this constant expectation and pressure
Mhm.
of how you need to act, how you need to socialize. If I go into a social setting, my younger brothers have to oblige to what I say.
Yeah, they got to defer.
Exactly. And if they challenge me in public, there will be hell to pay.
Mm.
You will be shunned, you will be shamed by the family because you don't do that. You respect your brother. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Even if I'm in the wrong.
Yeah, and even if you don't want them doing it,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
It must make it really hard to have disagreements within the sibling set.
Yes. And so when we think about it, I always use the five domains of self: physically, emotionally, relationally, mentally, and spiritually. The brother has the older male, the male has a lot of influence on the family system. So let's say my youngest brother Art, got married and he starts his own family. He now has a template to follow based on what my dad placed on me. He still comes into the family system, but within his system, he can dominate and he can dictate what
Well,
happens.
has
And
to, it sounds
yeah,
like, not just
it has to.
can.
Yeah. If I was to get a divorce, or if my partner was to file a divorce and ask for divorce, oh man, you weren't able to fulfill your responsibilities.
Yeah, that family failing is huge.
Exactly. You failed.
Yeah.
And so there's a shame connected to it. Yeah.
So a lot of the distinction between like machismo and masculinity within the family system, it sounds kind of in line with what I think of when I think of like European male sets and fathers and patriarchs just turned up,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
It's just that little bit more and sometimes a lot more depending on the facet.
Correct. And there is justification for redirecting. I can redirect you in any way, shape, or form, verbally, even physically, and you have to stay in line
Hmm.
for brothers. Does that make sense?
Well, and it sounds like what's interesting there to me is it also doesn't sound like you're the one that has to enforce it. Like the system
Mm.
enforces it for you.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Wait till your brother finds out. Wait till your brother finds
Yeah.
out, or wait till your dad finds out. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, my dad. It's like I start getting fear and anxiety because the patriarch is going to find out, and now I'm not only in trouble because of the violation, but socially. Wait till the family finds out. I'm going to be shunned.
Yeah.
I'm going to be embarrassed. Yeah.
Well, it's always kind of on the back of my mind around how as men, like you're in my generation, we're trained to push space. Like if we're in a room, we're supposed to be loud, we're supposed to be extroverted, we're supposed to be kind of the center of attention. And then when you talk to younger guys, it's very split,
Mhm.
where the elder men are telling them to do that in some certain way or form, but everything else is telling them to be small,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
Don't take up the space. And it's kind of profound to me that it's happened so quickly. Like what's happening within the Latin community around Me Too and these boundaries around equality.
I mean, you see that show up. However, I'll go back to, what does the family think? What does the family, what does the family system? I shook the system when when I came out as gay. Ooh, I shook the family system, not only within my nuclear family system, if my maternal side and my paternal side, the extended family. It's like
It
he,
rippled.
oh, it rippled. Family stopped
Uh,
talking to me. I was like, I'm not going to fit the mold that you guys have put on me. I'm not going to fit it. I'm not going to stand in it. To stay small, it's almost like you have to step up. There's that expectation and that pressure. But if I do get up and I do speak up and it's outside of the mold, you're going to have to answer to the family system, to the patriarchal system. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
it does. With every family system, that's always The biggest surprise to some of my clients when we talk about this is, hey, your family sent you here to make this big change. But when you change, the system's going to push you back towards what you were doing before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because the system is always looking for like maintenance of what's happening.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. What are common struggles that your Latino clients are dealing with these days?
I think the main struggle that we're seeing right now is insecurity in regards to future. What does the future look like? I have certain clients that are legal residents and there's that are wanting to become citizens, and they're afraid, because of the political climate, as to what's this going to look like? Do I even want to be part of this? Then there are those that are naturalized citizens that are afraid as well because of their family. There's just so much fear of the political climate, discrimination. That's the ongoing key thing, that there's subtle microaggressions that are coming up, starting to show up, and pretty much in your face. There's a lot of that showing up where I have to be very cautious, and I need to pick my battles on how I want to handle certain jokes at work, in society, the way they look at me, gestures. Do I really want to respond to that? Or do I stand back? So we have this expectation to step up, speak up, but at the same time, do I want to? Is it worth it?
It's exhausting and risky.
Correct. Not only do I put myself at risk, I'm going to put my family at risk, or whoever I'm with at risk. Do I want to really do that, or do I want to let it go? And there's that internal conflict with, I have this expectation socially to stand up, speak up, step up. But then again, do I want to cause that turmoil and that conflict? Do I want to pick the battles? And then if I step back, will I be shunned by the person? You didn't say anything. I can't believe you left it like that. Does that make sense? So it's like this constant.
It does.
This constant figuring things out, socially, family, plus who I am.
How much energy do I have right now? A lot of my clients, when they're kind of coming across these things out in the world and they're wanting to do something about it, there's always this guilt of, I didn't have the energy today, but I did that day.
Correct.
Right. And I feel like a lot of the exhaustion I'm hearing from people is this exhaustion of metering. Like even with all the action, it's like, where am I and what am I doing today with that?
Correct. Do I have it in me? And if I do, then what? Then what? And it's like, is this just ego based? It's like, no, I don't need to. I don't want to. And that's what's like, okay, I'd rather take it from my sister. I'd rather take it from my mother and deal with her than have to deal with this out here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One, save your energy for the ones that you can actually swing at.
Exactly.
That's how I always like to frame it. It's kind of like taking criticism from somebody. If you wouldn't ask them for their advice, why are you worried about the criticism?
Correct.
But then out in the world, do I really want to spend the time correcting that attendant, or do I want to take it on in my office where it's hitting me every day?
Correct. And that's where you're just like, pick and choose my battles. Do I want this energy? Do I just want to let it go? And I think that's a common theme that I'm hearing with the clients that are coming in. It's like, do I want to pick this battle? Do I want to go there, or do I want to save my energy and save it for my family, save it for the ones that I can?
Well, and it makes a lot of sense to me from our conversation around machismo and how in alignment the whole culture is around the family. So I think one of the things that I and a lot of my white guy clients talk about and struggle with is like, I'm fine with everything. Like, I don't like what's happening, but me personally, I'm going to be okay. And then the first time I kind of heard it from this end is I've got a Mexican client, and he was talking about how he's got a citizenship, but he's waking up in cold sweats thinking about his cousins.
Yeah.
And so there's just this like constant pressure on it.
Yeah. And so when you start thinking about the extended family as well, I'll give you an example. My cousin Richard, he left California, and he's now in, goodness, why am I drawing him? Kansas City, Missouri. He's in Kansas City, Missouri. And so
that's a jump.
Let me tell you. Okay, yeah, exactly. So he's the oldest male, and he was in church. So when my godfather, my Nino, died, he left to Kansas City, and it was a huge jump. He goes, I don't know how you did it. And I was like, what do you mean? I did it when I was 20. You did it when you were in 40s. I was like, he's like, I'm struggling because I feel like I abandoned my family. I'm not there anymore. I feel like I'm disconnected. Like, I've rejected them. I feel ashamed. I feel guilty. And I was like, this is all because you broke the cultural expectation of machismo. You broke it, the male expectation. You left your family, even after. So my godfather, which is his dad, passed away from cancer,
Mm.
and so then he had passed the torch to him. So then now here he is with a family in Southern California. His partner got a job in Kansas City, so he sold the house, he packed up and left, and the whole family just got dysregulated. Like, how dare
Yeah.
you? And some said it, some didn't, but he felt it. He definitely
Oh,
felt it.
I'm sure. I think that's one of the more destructive things about kind of white collar culture these days is the expectation of transition.
Correct.
You're going to move. If your career matters to you, at some point in your career, you're going to move. And I think that's just another barrier now for certainly Latino cultures, but also almost every other culture than white around
Correct.
leaving family.
Oh yeah, yeah. The family, like, and I use the word familismo. There's this expectation that you stay with core. Me being in Colorado and my parents being in California, they're still, every time I go home, it's like, when are you moving back? It's like, I'm not. It's like there's this hope of you're gonna
Yeah.
come back. I was like, if anything, you guys can come to Colorado. They're like, no, our
No, but
house
we
is
can't
here.
do that. We're trying to
Wait,
get you back in the fold, not wreck the fold more.
exactly. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
why? It's like it's like we're settled here. We stay here. You're supposed to stay here too with us. And
Well,
so,
and what's interesting about that is your family transitioned away from their family to come here.
mhm.
So how does that dissidence work out?
So, because during Christmas, family events, weddings, they live apart from each other. But let me show you how it works. So they live in San Bernardino County, in Riverside County, and my family, the family of origin, is from Mexicali, 3 hours away. So
Mhm.
they're away, but they can still go back. So it's a
Mhm.
3 hour drive.
It's within the range of like you can be there for the important
Exactly.
things.
Where I'm 16 hours away. My cousins,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm 13 hours away. I think my cousin's 20 hours away. There's this funny perspective about flying. It's like, if you can't drive to where you're
We're
at, I'm
not
like, but I can
going.
fly. I can fly. It comes in you. No, no, no. If you can't drive, because you
Yeah.
can drive for a day, but you can't fly for a day. So they can go back for these special events and spend the weekend with the family. So they're always connected. So even though
Mhm.
they're apart, they're always having that contact. It's me that I'm so far away. I can't see you every
Yeah.
Sunday dinner. I can't see you during the week. Yeah, we can have contact. We can FaceTime. It's not the same. It's not the same.
No. So we have kind of the family separation as folks move into white collar work. And we have the general pressure and uncertainty about the leadership trauma that's currently going on.
Mhm.
What tools are you sharing with your clients to overcome those struggles and cope with them?
One of the things that I've been using recently is a lot of my clients from religious backgrounds, but a lot of them come
Hmm.
from spiritual backgrounds. And a lot of them believe in the four directions. And so when we talk about I'm surrendering to spirit, I'm surrendering to God, and I talk to them about, okay, what that's part of this. Spirituality is a huge piece of the Latino culture, whether it be
Hmm.
Catholicism, Christian, or spiritualities, curanderismo, santeria, whatever spiritual practice that they engage in. And so when we look at what's going on politically, we look at, okay, how do you surrender, how do you hand it over, what's your higher power? And that's where I start how using it as a resource for them.
Hmm.
Specifically, a lot of clients that believe in spiritual, a lot of the majority of my clients believe in curanderismo, which is a practice of medicine, healing medicine. There's healing
Hmm.
medicine women, medicine men. And so there are a lot of small rural areas of Latin America. They don't have doctors, but they have curanderos, people who do a lot of spiritual work, and they do a lot of work with herbs and whatnot, a lot of natural medicine, if you may. And so when I talk to them, They're like, I'm always praying to spirit. I'm always meditating. So I tap into that spiritual practices that they have and learn to surrender to it. Look at how can you use this as a resource to manage your emotions, manage your stress. And then when they are able to practice it, or when they're able to connect with it as a resource, it functions for them. For those who don't have it, you start noticing there's a high level of substance use, a lot of high
Yeah.
level of gambling. You start noticing they don't have the
Anything
resource.
we can do to numb.
Exactly. And then you have those individuals that also are very connected to sports. You know what? I just go play soccer. I just go play football. I just go.
Go sweat it out.
I go sweat it out. And so you have a wide array of resources, but a lot of the times that when you connect with the individuals that have to do with the collective, they either handle it alone or they handle it in the family system. We get together and we hash it out, talk about it within the family system at a dinner, at a family gathering. We hash it out. We have our discussions, or I deal with it alone in my own practices, whether it be working out, whether it be spiritual. So you have those two dynamics, those individuals that can speak about it socially with family, or I do it in religion, I do it in faith, hand it over to my higher power, give it to the four directions. So there's various techniques that I use, especially to handle those situations.
What I'm always kind of in the back of my mind thinking about when it comes to acceptance work is almost every spirituality and every tool set has really good guidance to get there, and lining it up with the culture of the person that's in front of you is so key.
Correct.
That's why, because primarily I work with white men, I moved it from mindfulness to stoicism because that's ours.
Correct.
Right? Like that feels in alignment. And it sounds like for you in your practice, when you're working with Latino men, it's around where's your spiritual background, where's your family, how are you handing that over?
Exactly. And then if you notice in Latin culture, we have different celebrations. For example, we just had El Dia de los Reyes, which is where our family gets together and we're preparing for after Christmas. We have the Day of the Kings, and then we have Easter. And so it's very calendar based, or it's based on the moon cycles of your curanderos. And so it's real based on the moons. And so I'm very familiar with what's going on culturally, religiously, and familiar what's going on culturally, spiritually, so that they can align accordingly. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And it's very like the moon based calendar is so out of alignment with white American culture.
Exactly.
That helping people refine that's got to be huge.
Yeah. So here comes spring solstice. Okay. What does that look like for you? What are you going to do? Oh, I have to do a limpia. I have to do a cleansing. So I'm preparing for my cleansings. I'm going to do dieta. I'm going to prepare myself. And you start hearing these conversations about spirituality. And so you're able to connect where they're coming from. Again, physical, emotional, relational, mental, and spiritual, each individual based on their belief system, their upbringing, and then help resource to overcome whatever challenges is happening in the collective.
Well, and what that is kind of reminding me of, one of the things that's a pet peeve of mine out in kind of just the masculine care verse is the idea of discipline always being the answer.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Where you're just supposed to be like, just do it. Right.
Yeah.
Like decide, schedule, and do.
Right.
Be a Navy SEAL. Everybody should operate like the Navy SEAls. And don't get me wrong, I love my Navy SEAls. I work with a lot of them. They're awesome. And they absolutely do that. Most of us are not Navy SEAls.
No.
What I'm loving about what I'm hearing from you is you're leveraging the cultural touchstones to brace the engagement, to brace the tools, and to brace the change in alignment with what everybody else in your culture is doing at the same time. So it's not just you having to kind of mentally muscle through to what you're doing.
No, that's correct. And grace. That's the big one. Have grace. Don't try to fit the mold perfectly. Let me give you an example. Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. The Day of the Dead is where you make an altar for all the dead ancestors, and you take food for them and you remember them because it's the day that they come and visit you. And a lot of men have a very hard time emoting because cultural expectations, men don't cry, that you're less of a man. And so what I tell them is like, yeah, but do you miss your mom? Do you miss your grandma? Do you miss your aunt? Yeah. So, but I don't want to go to the family festivity of the altar. And I was like, so then don't. Make your own altar. Create your own altar. but that's
Hmm.
not the family norm. There it is, right? I have to go to my dad's house. I have to go to my brother's house because we have the altar there and the food's like, no, okay, go do that, but you can also make your own altar.
Yeah.
Have you thought about making your own altar in your own house? Do you have the pictures? Like, well, yeah, I guess I can do that. It's like, well, why don't you? Have some
Yeah.
grace. If you only can
Yeah.
spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour with your family, go spend that time with them, eat whatever you want to eat, but then come home and have your own altar. Just have some grace with yourself. You don't have to fit the mold and follow it to the T. Make it according
Yeah.
to what fits you.
Well, and it's that balance of group and social coping and individual responsibility and individual coping. And I feel like everybody has to find that balance, and it shifts around over the course of your lifetime based on what you're doing, where you're at, and who is within that alignment with you. It just sounds like within Latin culture, it's a lot of family is going to always be kind of like
Yes.
tipping the scale on that one.
Yes, there's a lot of family influence, and there's an expectation for you to follow the family norm.
Hmm.
If you divert from the family norm, be prepared for a lot of shunning, a lot of shaming, guilt tripping, because you don't align. Yeah,
I always think of that being like you have the individualistic cultures and the collectivist cultures, and there's cost to each,
correct,
right?
correct,
And but there's also benefits to each.
correct.
And so it, through this conversation and the strength of the family, it's got me thinking about the loneliness epidemic that we're
Yeah.
having,
Hmm.
right? And I went ahead and grabbed up some data just so I can share it with the listeners so they have a better understanding of where we are, right? 15% of men right now in America say they don't have a close friend, which is up 12% in 10 years, which is just astounding. Majority of men across all ages agree with the statement, no one really knows me well, with Gen Z actually being the highest of all the generations. Men are more likely to be single and have less sex than women. Apparently, 6 in 10 men under 30 are single, nearly double the rate of women of the same age. And roughly 1 in 5 men that are single are not looking for or unable to find sexual partners. It's one of the things that every client I work with struggles with on some level is this endemic loneliness and this pain of not being known by others and pain of not connecting with them. How is that playing out in the Latinx community?
Commitment, commitment. If I commit to you, I have to lose a certain part of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of integrating, it's losing. Does that make sense? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
integrating, I lose a sense of myself. Let's go to gender stereotypes. I'll speak to both. Well, I can speak to gay Latin men, and I can speak to heterosexual cisgender men. Men. The cisgender heterosexual men say, when I get married, I am now having to step up and in my machismo role
Mm-hmm.
in leadership, and I have to be the breadwinner. I have to be the provider, the house, the groceries. If my spouse
Discipline.
chooses, yeah, discipline, right? If my spouse chooses not to work, I have to support that because she's going to raise the children. There's this gender stereotype and social expectation. If she does work, there is a risk of me being seen as less of a man because you can't provide enough for your wife, so therefore she has to go find a job. So then I don't want to be seen as such. I'd rather be the sole provider. But then again, what about me? What about my
Mm-hmm.
free time? What about going out? What about my friends? Now everything is around the family system. What the family wants, what the family needs. If I want to sleep late, I can't sleep late because we have to go grocery shopping. We have to take care of the kids. We have to do. I don't have the ability to be. So you start noticing a lot of people don't want to commit. They don't want to lose their sense of self. Yet, who can I be authentic and genuine with and say, I don't want to marry. I don't want to do this. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. My younger brother, he's part of the Gen Zs. He's like, I am not getting married. And what's the very first thing? I just said, be ready, be prepared.
It's
And
coming.
it's coming. And sure enough, here comes my nephew, the oldest one, told him, are you ever going to get married? Aren't you ever going to,
It's
get your part?
time. What are you
It's
doing?
time.
Even I know
Exactly.
that.
Yeah. And my brother's like, my younger brother's 35. He's like, no, I don't think I'll probably shack up with somebody, but shack up? You're not going to get married? Ooh, you know what's going to happen. Everybody's going to be, and my brother's like, I don't care. And I'm okay with having very small a group of, he's very picky with his friends too. Like I have acquaintances and then I have friends. Why?
Yeah.
Because friends are, I have a handful of people that are friends, and
Well,
even
I think that's
those,
just a healthy dynamic to
yeah,
acknowledge. One of my least favorite things about English as a whole is how poorly it's used to define relationship. I love
hmm
my dog. I love my hamburger. I love my wife. I love myself. These are not the same thing,
no,
right?
no,
And everybody's either a friend, family, or colleague. No one
right,
talks about acquaintances.
it's
No one
correct,
acknowledges that colleagues aren't friends, right?
correct,
Some colleagues can be, right?
correct,
But there
correct,
is a distinction there about what parts of
correct,
yourself you show up with.
right. Well, I have acquaintances, I have colleagues, and then and I have friends, but then I
Mhm.
have soul tribe.
Nice.
Soul tribe. Soul
Okay.
tribe are those that, you know what, I can call you up and say, I fucked up. I messed up. I messed
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I need to tell you what I did. I lied. I freaking lied.
yeah. Yeah,
And
the
I can
people
be
that you
honest
can
and
process shame with.
exactly. And I'm feeling
Yeah,
ashamed and damn it, I'm feeling bad. See, those are soul tribe right there.
yeah,
Those are some
yeah,
the
yeah.
soul
And they're
tribe.
rare.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things that happened with Brene Brown is people overexpress shame now,
Oh gosh, yeah.
or just like put it away, right? As opposed to
Correct.
acknowledging that shame is designed to connect us.
Correct.
It just needs to be shared with people that are going to help you heal from it.
Correct.
Not
That's
with the grocery clerk, not with the
no.
person at work, not trauma dumping in a class.
No, 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 no. Gosh, have I had those? Yeah,
Every
yeah,
conference, every
yes,
conference, there's like at every breakout, there's at least one therapist that's just like, let me just vomit my 30
yeah.
years of trauma history on the room.
Correct, correct.
I think
No,
I did that once just because, you got to take your turn, I feel.
yeah. That was in 2012 for me. 2012 for me. No, yeah, no, I hear you. And you are correct. It's meant to connect us. However, I guess that there's this fear of connection. Speaking again from the Latin culture, there's a fear of connection because now that you know, are you going to use it as ammunition
Yeah.
against me?
Yeah. I think it goes with the idea you can't be connected without accountability.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And that means that the type of accountability that you're going to experience is going to be very based on who you're connecting with. And
Correct.
that's why we need to be kind of careful with that part of ourself, I feel, is a way to put
Right.
it.
Correct.
And it sounds like for your clients that you're seeing, it's they're not as much struggling with like the deep loneliness of white America. They're struggling with the balance of self and feeling alone in a group.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Because you have to somehow fit in somewhere. And
Hmm.
where is it your nuclear family? Is it extended family? Is it socially? Is it church? Is it within
Hmm.
your spirituality? Where are you tapping into?
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I keep saying, I feel like I see clients struggle with that when they're trying to find those communities to connect to, where I can't bring every part of myself here. I don't know that this is the place for me. Instead
Correct.
of, well, this is space for that part of you.
Correct.
Where else might you connect? I always like the rule of 10 socially seems to work out really well for people. Where
Uh-huh.
if I walk into a room, there's 10 people, 8 people I'm not going to remember in 2 years.
Mhm.
There's one person I could probably get close with. And there's one person that, for no knowledge of why, I don't like right away.
Right. Right. Right.
But if
Right.
you're not out in the world and out in these events, cultures, families, you can't find your 1 in 10.
Correct.
So it's
And
kind of the cost of getting there.
yeah, and a lot of times the cost of getting there is a lot of social influence. For example, let's say I had a falling out with you, and then I have my brother that connects very well with you. I'm going to interfere and say,
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
don't connect. Why? Because I don't like them. I don't like them.
Yeah, I see that a lot with divorces, right?
Correct.
Where, the friends start to split up and all of a sudden you lose the key kind of social player within that group and that whole group just breaks off.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah. And you
Mm.
see that familial influential factor, social influential factor. If we're cousins, friends, and we've been friends for many years, and they don't like you, I have to fall in line and I have to
That
dislike you
sounds
because you like
very
it.
similar to the East Coast
Yeah,
of like,
yeah.
no, we don't like them anymore. Like if I
Yes,
don't like them,
yes.
we don't like them.
Yes, and here's the
Yeah.
reasons why. And if you go with them, you're not only betraying myself, you're betraying the social cultural norm of how we
Yeah.
function in groups.
Yeah. It took me a long time to wash that out here in Colorado from the East Coast because loyalty was the key component to any
Right.
social circle. And that meant that as long as they were loyal, they could be as amoral in any other aspect as they wanted.
Correct. Correct.
And it took a while to kind of like, no, no, yeah, loyalty and there's got to be
Yes.
some and
Yes.
in there
Yes.
somewhere.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's very funny because when I came to Denver, I had an interaction with a friend. I was a group of friends. Oh my gosh, this was in my 20s. I'm now in my mid 40s. And I was told and the verbatim, I'm going to tell you what I was told. Remember, when you have a group of friends, you stay loyal, and they were Latino friends. So you stay loyal to these friends. I was like, yeah, my friends were my family, right? Back in Southern
Hmm.
California. And so it's like, yeah, but what do you mean? One of my friends told me back in the days, like, the president has his friends, and the president's friends don't hang out with just anybody. They have close friends. And I was like, you're being elitist. You know that, right? With this, you're saying like, okay, we're a group of friends and we're like up here and
Hmm.
you can't be friends with people down here. And the more we're having this conversation, the more I started realizing, oh, there is the power dynamic in
Hmm.
friendships. Like if we're up here and you're friends with us, don't be friends with people that we see down here based on what?
Hmm.
It's not even social status, economic status. It's based on ego, how
Hmm.
one person believes the other person is. And you see that a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the hard part about distincting like male ego and male status because there's so much gray in there,
Correct.
where acknowledging that status is drastically important,
Correct.
right? If you want to be somewhere professionally, go spend time with the people that are there,
Correct.
right?
Right.
But if you're going to your 5v5 basketball game, everybody there is there to play. Who cares?
Correct. Correct.
Right?
Correct. Correct. It's like, it's just the game, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless, have you ever heard of Mormon church leagues?
No, no.
Okay. So Mormon culture is kind of like that classic 50s dynamics. That means that church basketball with the middle-aged guys gets rough. Like hospital visits, broken bones, like it's all just this ego push of
Uh-huh.
like who's dominating on the court this week.
Oh my gosh.
It's just like, and, well, most Mormon guys are so like nice out in the world that I think that's just where they put all that aggression. It just lands
Correct.
in this one spot.
This one spot, and so let's go for it. Let's just dive in full play.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you talk about status within masculinity, there's also that how far and it's funny because now that we opened this up, it's opening up so
They
many
just
other
like, yeah,
things.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because here's the other thing is the masculine status based on what part of Mexico you're from or what part of Latin
Oh,
America you're
yeah.
from.
Yeah, yeah.
Skin color, oh my gosh, that's
Mhm.
another one within Latin America. It's like if the
Mhm.
darker the skin, the more indigenous you are, the more hairier you are. I don't the open chest, hair on the
Mhm.
chest with the chains, that's connected to colonialism. That's connected to the hairier you are, the more European you are. The chains represent gold and status. And so if I open up my chest and have hairy chest and have chains, and you try to open up your chest and you don't have any hairy chest, that says a lot about where you are
Yeah,
within that dynamic. It's so, I mean, we can go down
yeah.
this rabbit hole and see so much within
Well,
the
it's
culture.
funny that we're talking about it here because I'm doing an entire solo episode on status
Oh,
and
yeah.
discussing about like because it's a key component to
Oh, yeah.
masculinity, right? It's one of the
Yeah.
four pillars of seeking status as masculine.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're a young man, you don't have competency to buy in with yet. And so it's all of kind of the unearned privileges, right? Are you tall? Are you handsome? Do you have chest
Exactly.
hair? What
Yeah.
color is your skin? Were you raised with money? Were you not raised with money? And then as you age, competency becomes king, right? The
Correct.
more competent you are
Correct.
in your area, the more masculine, successful you are in your area. And it just kind of
Correct.
moves through. But it's the cultural aspects of that, yeah, we could go on for
I know.
like 4 hours, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because my brothers, this is the first time I grew out my beard, and my brothers I became bald at a very young age. And so they have full set of hair, but they have
Oh
a
man,
patchy
you were
beard.
robbed.
Yeah, I was
And you
wrong.
just like put it here.
Yeah. And so they see my face. It's like, we will give you anything from our head to get your
We
facial
want
beard.
this, yeah.
We
you
want
got
it.
that
And it's like,
wisdom.
really? And my dad doesn't have the beard, but my
Mm.
mom's side of the family does. And so my brothers are like, how the hell did you grow a beard like that? I was like, listen, you guys got the head, I got the face. Let it, but it's
We
that.
couldn't have both. That'd be too much power in the world.
Well, but that's what I said, because my brothers were like, we would give anything for that damn masculine face that you have. And I was like, really this? And they're like,
I mean, it is an amazing beard.
Thank you. And then they're like, what led to it? And I was like, I just wanted to see how I would look. And they're like, the asymmetry, the color, the way it's like,
Mhm.
and I was like, I was so surprised to hear from my brothers how much the beard meant masculine power and authority to them. And I was like, I've never had this conversation with them until they saw me with the beard. They were super jealous of it. They're like, we have patchy beards. We can't grow it like you can. What I would give to have that beard.
Well, and I think that's the hard part, right? Since we all start seeking that status so young based on factors out of our control, we can get fixated like that.
Right.
Rather than going, okay, I've got the beard and I can leverage that in the world.
Right.
Or I've got the head of hair, I can leverage that in the world.
Exactly.
We're like, I don't have the head of hair, I don't have the beard.
Exactly. We look at the shortcomings, right? We look at the shortcomings of what we do have. Yeah, yeah. And and we see that a lot, the comparison piece. And that's one of the things that I see that a lot in Latin culture is like, how can I compensate for my shortcomings within my masculinity based on cultural, societal norms of what it means to be a man?
Yeah, and I think that the kind of individual journey that I see clients take on, and I'm still on myself, is how much of the societal expectations resonate and can be your culture, and how much of it needs to go away for your sense of self and ability to be in the world. And it's always kind of negotiating.
Correct. It's always negotiating.
Always.
And so it's a constant challenge. One of the things I realized, and I told my brothers, is that it's always going to be evolving. It's always going to be evolving. It's always going to be a sense of contention within ourselves. What does it mean to be?
I got like one last like question about the work, and you talk to your brothers in a way that I don't talk to mine. Right? How much of that is because of the close-knit family, and how much of that is because your family looks to you based on your job?
No. What really broke it was me breaking away.
So now they're seeking that closeness when you're around.
Yes. Yeah, because what made it was when I left, they were pissed. They were pissed. But then when I said I had to do this because I was gay and I could not live in the system, they got it. They're like, you had to survive. Yeah. Okay, you did this out of survival. I can respect that. And then that's what brought us.
I can be happy that you're still here with us.
Exactly. And then we connected. And then now we have those heart-to-heart conversations. We have those discussions about, what it means to be a man, what it means to be in relationship, what it means for them to be identified.
I'm incredibly jealous that you have that with them.
Yeah.
Me and my brother, we were very, very close. And then I left. I came out to Denver from the East Coast. And since then, like the close conversations have gone away over time, and I still love my brother. He's a great guy. When I can see him, we do. But we miss that.
And I think because we spend time apart, but when we come back together, it's like boom, it's just back. We reengage, and we talk about everything and anything.
Yeah. I think with my family, my grandmother was such a linchpin for that it was her kind of family role to do the emotional labor of getting everybody together, creating the space for us to connect. And once we lost her, no one's filled that space.
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted. Yeah. So to kind of wrap up the episode, there's 3 questions I want to ask every person that comes on. The first one is, what is the truth about masculinity you learned before you were 12?
Females have much more control than we aspire to. Because out of all the men that especially I'm speaking for Latino, that machismo, man, did the women have a lot, like my grandmothers, my aunts, like they had a lot of that was the truth, that
Mm.
the
The men
men
had the
felt they
role, the
had the
women
role,
had
the
the
women had
power.
yes,
Yeah.
and when they would be challenged in conflict, well, I'll leave you. I don't know who I'd be without you. I mean,
Hmm.
there's some codependency there as well, but there's almost like that sense of identity as well. Like there's
Hmm.
the essence of us, the essence of us, and so that's a truth that and it rings true a lot with even in gay couples. It's like I part of my identity has now been integrated with you, and to separate. There's this huge challenge of how am I going to redefine myself without you
Hmm.
anymore? That's
Yeah.
scary and that's unsettling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So something that resonated and that's made sense to hold on to is the idea that without the feminine, there isn't the masculine, and there is a
Correct.
power in the feminine and an
Yes.
expectation in the
Yes.
masculine.
Yes. And I'm all about the divine feminine. I'm like,
Mhm.
ooh, I'm all about the divine feminine. It's like I see
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So at the age of a very young age, that was a very strong truth for me. I picked it up. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anybody frame it that way before. I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Next one is tell us about a time that pursuing manhood hurt you.
Pursuing men has hurt me. The first time I was disappointed.
Mm.
Nobody taught me that disappointment was going to be part of life.
Hmm.
And the first time I was disappointed by a male mentor, it wasn't even my father. It was a male mentor that I had. It crushed me
Hmm.
because there's your dad, and then we. I think as a young boy, we always have your dad, and we always grow. I don't want to be
Yeah.
anything, but then we have that one ideal person that we want. If that could have a
Hmm.
father, it can have a mentor, it would be this one. It was that one person, and I remember being so disappointed when I asked of some support from them, and
Hmm.
the
Rejected.
betrayal just came, the rejection came, and
Yeah.
I was like, wow, all these years I held you in high esteem and regard. I mean, it was a lesson learned, but the
Hmm.
disappointment, I never realized the depth of the disappointment that I was going to feel. I was probably
Mm.
like 14, 15 years old, and
Yeah.
it really it hurt me to my core. Like, wow, this is betrayal. Okay.
So kind of the chasing the role and the mentor that we're
Correct.
told to do over and over and over forever. And when
Correct.
that failed you, no one told you what to do with that.
Correct. And not
Yeah.
knowing what to do with the disappointment and the hurt.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, and like I always think of dissonance with those moments. You know, that time when you see this is a man I admire. What are they doing? That's
Exactly.
not in alignment with who's in my head.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And then yeah, and so that was, I think that was the biggest one for me.
Yeah, that sounds pretty profound.
Yeah.
And it's right at those kind of like profound moments, right? That adolescent time when they're really starting to hit you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so the last one is tell us about a time when pursuing manhood empowered you.
Huh. You know, when I believed in myself and I accepted myself when I made it. I don't
Hmm.
need to prove to anyone. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Where I've
Hmm.
arrived. I've
Hmm.
arrived. I'm here. And it's funny. It's going to be very, very awkward. It was one of the biggest successes and dreams that I had. It was when I graduated from, well, first, it was led to my undergrad degree. When I got the degree, the first time I got the
Hmm.
degree, and then when I got my master's degree. But I think the one where I stepped on the red dot for TED Talk, because
Hmm.
I landed, because I was able to speak my truth authentically, who I am, who I was in my life experience, show up with nothing to hold me back. The minute I stepped on that red dot, there was this huge, I've made it.
Release.
I've
Yeah.
made it. And I got a bit emotional.
Well, and I imagine that you wouldn't have hit that dot and you wouldn't have moved into that space if the pursuit of being a man and filling space wasn't part of that.
Correct. It's
Yeah.
somehow in my
Yeah.
narrative, it was like that. I've always watched TED Talks. I always watched. I was like, oh, that's that. And they would always inspire me and
Yeah.
motivate me and speak to my heart and soul. And I was like, man, to do that would be the epitome. When I applied and I got it, the first time I applied and I got it, I was like,
It was
oh my
huge.
God. And then I stepped on,
Yeah.
the minute I stepped on, I remember telling myself, Alejandro, you've arrived,
Mhm.
and just getting emotional. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very telling that almost every man I ask these questions of, it's tied to like a professional achievement of some kind.
Yeah.
Almost
Correct.
always, because that's what we're empowered to, right? That's the example that we're
Correct.
looking to.
Correct.
And I'm exceedingly happy that you had that, and jealous, right? It's been on my vision board for a minute.
Let's talk. Let's talk.
We'll get there.
Definitely.
We'll get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen his TED Talk, you should watch it. It's fantastic. I'll link it in the show notes.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the moment where I thought my grandparents would be so proud. My parents would be proud. But in that moment, it's like, I am so
That's
proud
it.
of you. You've arrived.
Well, that's how I
Alejandro.
found you. Like, you
did?
remember, because we've talked a lot about, like, we've been around each other in the space, right? In different education events and different things online, particularly since
Correct.
COVID when no one's going out. But I remember the first time I saw you speak was your TED Talk. Like, I think either you or Kara had posted it, and I watched it and was touched. And then I started looking for you
Yeah.
and finding you, right? Because
Yeah,
we're not, the circles of our profession aren't that big.
No, right. It's true. Yeah.
And so I'm really thankful that happened, because I got to work with you and have you in my life. So I'm really glad you got that red dot.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm super grateful, because in that moment, I felt like I honored my ancestors. I honored, it was a rush of moments of gratefulness to everyone, everything that I've ever experienced, especially my nuclear family as well. It's like, I've arrived, here we go. And then I started speaking. I was like,
here's something you can understand on all the things I've worked for.
exactly. And then being able to look at it and look at what I've achieved and be able to be like, I see you. I see you. Just tell yourself, I see you. And I'm proud of you. Does that make sense? To speak to that inner self of like, I see you and I'm proud of you. It's a beautiful integration of man, a child seeing man. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like, here we go.
it does.
I see you.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. If I saw this at 10, I'd be happy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how happy I am that you came on and that you're brave enough to be my first interview. Thank
I'm
you
honored.
so much.
I am
This
so
is
honored
so
to
fun.
be. Yeah. Yeah.
And if anybody's looking for you or looking for help, where would they find you? I've got your LinkedIn, and I'm going to post that with the show notes, but where would you like people to see?
They can look at me at my website, transcendingconsultinggroup.com. And I'm opening up another, I'm going to make an announcement. I'm opening up another practice.
Another one. You overachiever? What are you doing to yourself?
No. So let me tell you how this came about. Sendas Sagradas, because of the work that I'm doing with men, Latin men, with search of spirituality, I've opened up a psycho-spiritual practice called Sacred Pathways, Sendas Sagradas. It's in its infancy. I haven't, but there will be a website for Sendas Sagradas, Sacred Pathways, mainly for Latin men who are looking for spirituality. It's very union, depth oriented with a lot of spiritual components from the Latin culture. But so
this is really you moving from the purely clinical into that spiritual self.
Exactly. It's been part of my life. And so they can look at me at Transcending Consulting Group, and coming soon, Sendas Sagradas, Sacred Pathways. And I'll give you that information so you can link
that's
it
going
as
to be
well.
great.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that that's going to exist. Like, that just makes me happy knowing it's in the world.
Yes. Sacred Pathways. Because I feel like the majority of the men that I work with they've been through an alchemical process of evolution and integration based on everything they've gone through. They just need that spiritual support, someone that they can show up authentically and genuinely in their spirituality.
Well, and it really is that different lane. Like, I so often with clients have to kind of steer them to the spiritual. Like, hey, I'm not a priest. I could talk to you
Correct.
about self-growth. I could talk to you about skills. I could talk to you about your story. But if you're looking for information on God, you got to, you got to go
Correct.
find that somewhere else.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So yeah, so
Well,
yeah, they can look at me LinkedIn, Google me, Alejandro Castro. You'll be able to
yeah,
find a lot of my podcasts, a lot of the interviews that I've done
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is what, like your 80th appearance.
In the 20s. I'm in the 20s. Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
way to the 80th.
Yeah, on the way. Thank you so much for having me, though. I appreciate it.
Uh,
And I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for being
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that's our conversation with Alejandro Castro. We were so lucky to have him on. I'm so happy that he was willing to come and give us the information that he did and share his story. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Thank you again for being here. Let me know what you'd like to see. Let me know what you'd like to see improve. And I can't wait for you to hear the next one. Thank you so much.